Daniel Sports Central will be giving you guys our 2024 season predictions for the South Carolina Gamecocks, a team that went 5-7 in the 2023 season. This is a team that could surprise a few people in 2024. They're a much different team in this upcoming season, but at the same time, they're a team with a lot of potential, I would say. So, how is this team going to be in 2024, and what can we expect out of this team in this upcoming season? That's what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be looking at the players this team will be losing and returning and predict their schedule top to bottom in this video. So with that, let's get started with a quick recap of 2023. Once again, a 5-win season for this team, just right on that bowl threshold. And this was a good enough team last season, I would say, to make it to a bowl game. They just had such a difficult schedule. I mean, playing North Carolina week 1, Clemson, two of the top teams in the ACC were on this team's non-conference schedule last season. So that's obviously tough, especially when you play Clemson every year. It honestly just feels like a common theme for South Carolina to have one of the toughest schedules in the country, mainly because you play one of the top teams in the ACC every year in Clemson. Then this past season, you add North Carolina to that. Doesn't really help anything. So, I mean, this was a 5-win team, but honestly, talent-wise, this could have been a 7 or 8-win team last year, especially when you consider some of the close losses that this team took. They kept it within 10 to Georgia on the road in week 3, which I don't really like to glorify losses much, but going on the road to Athens week 3, keeping within 10 and putting up a fight as this team did, definitely shows a lot of potential in what this team was last season. But looking forward to 2024, this is going to be a much different team. Spencer Rattler being gone, it's up to Lenore Sellers now, which we really haven't seen him too much, so there's a bit of uncertainty there, but sounds like he's a quarterback with a lot of upside, so he's worth keeping an eye on. Obviously, the receiving core is pretty much revamped. You got Campbell coming in, Larvadane, Jared Brown as well. So, and don't forget about Raheem Sanders coming in from Arkansas. He's going to be a key player for this backfield. You can expect him to have a significant impact on this offense next season. So, I think this offense honestly should be better. Obviously, Xavier Legette was such a key player last season, but otherwise this receiving core really didn't have any big standouts. That was a big issue as to why this offense wasn't better. Spencer Rattler is a good enough quarterback, especially at his best, to the point where I feel like this team could have been fine last season, but obviously lack of depth in the receiving core was kind of an issue last season, so we'll see if that's improved this season, which I would expect it to be. And then the defense obviously is going to be, I would say the defense should have some decent experience. Maybe an improvement could be seen there as well. But you look at the schedule. You start the season against Old Dominion at home, Kentucky on the road week 2. So you have 2 SEC matchups in your first 3 games, which I would say isn't ideal, but Kentucky's definitely a beatable team there on the road. LSU is a bit tougher. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a 9 or 10 win team this season. Akron at home, you got a bye week, and then Ole Miss. Your October is brutal. Ole Miss at home, they could be a top 5 team in the country next year. Alabama on the road, Oklahoma on the road, both really difficult road games. And then you got Texas A&M at home. This is a winnable one, I would say. Vanderbilt on the road, you got Mizzou at home. They turned out to be a really strong team last season. I wouldn't be surprised if they were at a similar level this year, so it's good you have them at home. Wofford at home, and then Clemson on the road to finish out the regular season. So it's once again a pretty difficult schedule. That's just how it is for South Carolina, especially having to play Clemson every year. Wouldn't be surprised if Clemson was also improved in 2024. So going on the road there doesn't make it much easier. But you look at the first month or so, Old Dominion, think you get an easy win there. Kentucky and LSU, I would say Kentucky is a really winnable game. I think Kentucky and South Carolina are kind of on a similar level. But going on the road there, I do want to slightly favor Kentucky there. But once again, it's one of those 50-50 matchups. LSU is tougher, though. I think LSU should still be a pretty strong team this season, despite Jaden Daniels being gone. So I do think he dropped that one. But week 3 at home, I wouldn't be surprised if that game was pretty close. And then you got Akron at home, easy win. So 2-2, I think, heading into October. October is really tough. Ole Miss at home, I mean, their offense is going to be incredible in 2024. So I do think this defense facing off against Jackson Dart, it's going to be pretty tough for South Carolina to contain that offense for 4 quarters. So I think Ole Miss finds a way there. Alabama, Oklahoma, Crimson Tide should be a pretty strong team still, even though I do expect them to fall off just a bit. Either way, going on the road there, going to favor the Tide against Oklahoma and Norman. Honestly, if you had Oklahoma at home, that's a game that I honestly could see this team upsetting Oklahoma. That also would be an interesting game if Spencer Rattler was still around, obviously facing off against his former team. But obviously that's not the case. But you got him on the road. That's a really difficult place to play. I do think Oklahoma is kind of I would say they're maybe a beatable team for South Carolina. But I do think that's one of those close losses there as well. So I do have you 2-5 going into November. You face off against Texas A&M. Think that's a game that you win. Texas A&M might be a better team than South Carolina this upcoming season, but having them at home I do think is a pretty good opportunity for a nice win there for the Gamecocks. So you're 3-5 going into Vanderbilt. I do think you beat them, and I also think you beat Mizzou. This would be a signature win on the season if you can take care of them. I'll say this as well. Mizzou's had a lot of noise this offseason as potentially being an dark horse SEC contender. They're going to have some good experience. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they fell off just a little bit. So by the time we're in mid-November, Mizzou might not, they could have a couple of losses, 2 or 3 losses, I think, going into that one. And that's maybe a game that Mizzou kind of sleepwalks into, coming off of a pretty difficult stretch. So I do think South Carolina finds a way to have a really nice win there against Mizzou, which pretty much ultimately gets you to a bowl game. Wofford at home, I think you take care of them no problem. So I do have you losing to Clemson on the road, a tough place to play, rivalry matchup. Clemson should be improved this season. So I've got you at 6-6 on the season. I think you find a way to a bowl game. This is a team with enough upside this season to the point where, and they were good enough last season to the point where I do have optimism for this team to get to 6 wins. It's just a matter of, can this team win the close games? And I feel like there's going to be a lot of those on this schedule this season. Kentucky on the road is going to be close. I would say Oklahoma on the road could be close. Same with Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Mizzou, maybe even Clemson on the road. So, how many close games can this team win? I think they find a way to 6 wins, but 5 or 6 wins is definitely, I would say, a ballpark for this team this upcoming season. But I would say 6 wins, get to a bowl game, get a nice bowl win. I would say this team is definitely heading in the right direction. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on South Carolina, your thoughts on this team, record predictions, all of that. And I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan, the Soul Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.